If it's Tuesday, President Trump meets with his national security team in the Situation Room as he weighs the possibility of direct U.S. involvement in the Israel-Iran conflict as both sides launch new rounds of attacks. Plus, new calls on Capitol Hill for increased security protections and for a toning down of the heated rhetoric in the aftermath of that deadly attacks on Minnesota state lawmakers. And no safe spaces. That's the message from the Trump administration after another policy reversal, now saying immigration arrests will continue at restaurants, hotels, and agricultural work sites. Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Garrett Hake in Washington, where we begin with the Middle East on edge for the fifth consecutive day as air raid sirens blared and more explosions rocked both Israel and Iran, and with the increasing possibility that the U.S. could get directly involved. President Trump just wrapped up a meeting with his national security team in the Situation Room after abruptly leaving the G7 summit a day early, saying he needed to focus on the Middle East crisis. This as the White House weighs whether to help Israel target Iran's nuclear facilities. Vice President Vance was asked this afternoon whether the U.S. was closer to taking military action against Iran. Listen to what he said.
I think the president is making clear to the American people and the entire world that his policy is that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, and that part of that is that they're not allowed to have enrichment in their country. And there are many different ways, many different options at the president's disposal for how to accomplish that ultimate policy goal, but that is the policy goal.
That followed several extraordinary social media posts from the president over the last 24 hours, starting with an ominous warning yesterday evening, telling people in Tehran, a city of almost 10 million, to evacuate immediately. That was followed by posts this morning saying, quote, "We now have complete and total control of the skies over Iran," and a seeming threat to Iran's supreme leader, saying, "We are not going to take him out, at least not for now." It remains unclear exactly what the president meant by any of those posts, but speaking overnight to reporters on Air Force One, he said he wants to see an end to the conflict.
What specifically is better than a ceasefire? What are you looking for here?
An end. A real end, not a ceasefire. An end.
So something that would be permanent?
Yeah, or giving up entirely. That's okay, too.
Are you close there? Is that possible in the next 24 hours?
Why not? Certainly possible. Complete give up. That's possible, yeah.
Are you open to negotiating with the Iranians right now, or do you want to wait?
I don't know. I've been negotiating. I told them to do the deal. They should have done the deal. Their cities have been blown to pieces. They've lost a lot of people. They should have done the deal. I told them, do the deal. So I don't know. I'm not too much in a mood to negotiate.
And in another stunning moment, President Trump publicly disputed an assessment from his own intelligence chief, Tulsi Gabbard, who told a congressional committee back in March that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon.
You've always said that you don't believe Iran should be able to have a nuclear weapon. But how close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having one.
Well, today, while on Capitol Hill, Director Gabbard told reporters she was on the same page as the president when it came to the intel community's assessment of Iran's nuclear program. Joining me now to parse what all of that means, our team of NBC News reporters. White House correspondent Monica Alba is with us. NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley is in Tel Aviv. And NBC News senior national security correspondent Kornacki is at the Pentagon. Mon, I'll start with you. What more are we learning about why the president left that G7 early and what happened in this Situation Room meeting this afternoon?
Well, Garrett, like with anything with this president, a couple of things can be true at once, and it does seem like he did decide to come back to Washington, at least for the official explanation, to monitor the situation that's unfolding in the Middle East and to be able to have some face-to-face conversations with his top aides and advisors in order to make a series of key decisions. At the same time, he says that he felt he had a very successful day of meetings yesterday in Canada and that he had accomplished everything he had set out to. So sometimes we have seen a pattern of the president leave these global summits early once he feels he wants to. He makes that decision and then he acts on it. As far as that meeting that he had in the Situation Room, we know it lasted a little over an hour. And if it's anything like it was on Friday, where a lot of this was unfolding in real time, these are conversations where the president is likely reviewing a menu of options about what role the U.S. can play here beyond what it's already doing in terms of aiding Israel in its defense, trying to intercept and fight off those missiles and drones coming from Iran. But the major question here that nobody has been able to answer is whether the U.S. is going to be really plunged further into this conflict by, for instance, potentially assassinating the supreme leader of Iran, which the president says for now he will not do, even though he says the U.S. knows where he's hiding. Will the U.S. provide some weaponry that would aid Israel, or that the U.S. would unilaterally act to try to further cripple Iran's nuclear capabilities and ability to enrich uranium, which we know is something that is possibly being considered? Or is a lot of this political bluster and threat, which, again, and you detailed this in his Truth Social post, is pretty aggressive language for something that the president could be, again, preparing the American people to consider? Or is this just a conversation he's trying to force to see if there's any kind of diplomatic path that can be returned to, though that seems pretty difficult at this point?
Mon, you're as experienced as anyone of trying to parse these things. To expand on your metaphor of the menu of options here, what does the president's social media post, what do the comments from the vice president tell you about what the president might choose here?
It does seem like he is trying to at least put the narrative out there or set the stage for the idea that the U.S. could join Israel or try to act on this and go forth with some potential military action in Iran. Just look at the language he's using. He's saying, we have total control of the skies over Iran. Our patience is wearing thin. He's trying to imply that this is now an argument that the U.S. is at the table at and more involved in. And not just, again, in that diplomatic sense, which is what the argument had been for the last couple of weeks, saying that the president, even on Air Force One a few hours ago, he said, I'd love for everybody to get back to the table and to try to take the deal. But he's really tilting in the other direction, it seems. And you mentioned the vice president's comments as well. He is the one saying that the president needs to be trusted on this. But again, they're trying to kind of pull back and say that there's an idea here that could be way more broad than what had originally been discussed, when the posture had been the U.S. was just going to be helping and in a defensive posture and not going forward and being more involved. But they're now opening the door to that in a far more significant manner, I'd say. Garrett.
All right, Monica, keep us posted on if we start to hear anything more from the White House now that that meeting has wrapped up. I want to turn now to Matt Bradley in Tel Aviv. Matt, I know you spent big portions of last night in a shelter. What's the mood like in Tel Aviv today? What's the view on the ground there?
Yeah, well, Garrett, and I got to tell you, it wasn't big portions of the night. It was maybe 20 or 30 minutes for 3 times throughout the entire night. Once early in the night, once about 3 a.m., and then once, 7 or 8 a.m. But I got to tell you, when you walk around the streets here in Tel Aviv, I think the best thing I can do to compare it for you is it's like COVID. Once bustling city streets, now almost entirely quiet. You see someone here and there. Every once in a while you'll see a shop open, but really very, very quiet compared to what it was before. That having been said, we have now seen, as I mentioned, the quietest period that we've had ever since this whole thing began on Friday morning. We haven't had a fatality in Israel from Iranian attacks in the past 24 hours. So that is new, and whether or not that actually indicates that Iran is running out of steam, that its weapons are no longer coming to bear in the same way they were in the opening days, I can't make that judgment, and we don't really know, though we are hearing from the Israelis time and time again, I think as you mentioned, that the Israelis enjoy complete air superiority over Tehran, Iran's capital, and that they've managed to knock out about a third of Iran's missile launchers, which means they're going to be sending over, presumably, fewer missiles. And that's exactly what we're hearing from the IDF, that each volley that has been fired in the past day, more or less, is a fraction of, or contains a fraction of the number of missiles that the volleys contained before in the opening days, and even fewer than they contained back last year in April and October, the last time the Israelis and the Iranians exchanged direct fire. So, again, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but things have dramatically quieted down, even though there still seems to be a lot of pain that the Iranians are capable of meting out.
All right, Matt, stay safe over there. I want to turn to Courtney now. And Courtney, I want to pick up on this acknowledgement from Director Gabbard. I guess acknowledgement's not the right word, but her comments today that she's now on the same page as the president when it comes to the assessment of Iran's nuclear program. Do we believe that's because the assessment has been changed to get her on the president's page, or perhaps the president is overstating where the nuclear program is for whatever reason?
Yeah, that's
Where
a great
are
question,
they really?
Garrett.
I guess maybe the better way to start.
That's a great question. So publicly, what we know about the Director of National Intelligence, with the intelligence community's assessment, is that Iran is not currently making a nuclear weapon. Now, we know that they have pretty dramatically increased their stockpile of enriched uranium, and that is putting them on a glide path towards having the ability to build the weapon. But the key here is the intelligence agencies continue to say, and frankly have said this for years, that that decision has not been made by the supreme leader to actually build the weapon. Now, once they make that decision, that could happen pretty quickly. But again, what she's talking about, how they're on the same page, is really unclear, unless it's a vague statement that, in fact, Iran could have a nuclear weapon if they decided to pretty quickly. It would just be a matter of enriching the uranium to a higher level, Garrett.
All right. So among the armchair experts on Iran right now, we've all been learning and discussing a lot about Fordow, the nuclear enrichment facility there. You are an actual expert on it. And so I pose to you this question. What kind of weaponry would it take to go after this underground, under a mountain site? Is this really the kind of thing that only the United States can do?
At this point, yes. Okay, so the reason is the actual facility, sort of the hallways where the actual facility lives, is about 300 feet underground, maybe a little, give or take a little bit, but roughly 300 feet underground. And it's underneath deep concrete. So there's really only a very small number of weapons that could actually penetrate that. One, we're starting to hear more about it this week. It's called a GBU-57. It's a 30,000-pound bomb. And frankly, even with that, it would probably take multiple bombs to actually really break through that concrete and get down to the actual facility. Now, keep in mind, it's not like it's just one building. It is a large complex. Sure. It's surrounded by a military facility as well. So at this point, it's as far as we know, the United States is the only one who has this bomb, and the United States is the only one who has an aircraft capable of carrying it and deploying it. I say as far as we know because the reality is here, we know what has been released publicly, we know what has been reported, but there are always things that we just don't know, Garrett. At this point, we believe the U.S. is the only one to have that capability, though.
Now, as a former Kansas City, Missouri resident, I'm legally compelled to ask you, is that the kind of thing that has to be flown from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri on a B-2? Or what do we have in the region right now in terms of weaponry? What can be done with the assets that already exist in the Middle East?
It would be flown from a B-2, and by the way, they don't just keep those 30,000-pound bombs sitting anywhere. They would have to move them into the region as well.
Right. Okay.
Of course, they're not going to telegraph when they do that. But look, I mean, Garrett, these are things that if the decision is made, it could happen quickly. At this point, we don't believe the decision has been made. We have no indication that that is the case. But yes, they would have to use B-2s. The U.S. has other bombers that are actually already still in the region. They have them at Diego Garcia, but the B-2s are still, as far as we know, are still here back in the United States.
Nobody has an air tag on those bad boys. Courtney, thank you for your reporting on this. I know you'll stay on top of it. I want to bring in Aaron David Miller now. He's a former advisor on Arab-Israeli negotiations and a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Aaron, I'm so glad you're with us. I want to start with the domestic politics of this all, and then we'll get back into the international part of it. President Trump mostly ran on this idea of a more isolationist, no new wars in the Middle East specifically stance. What do you make of the divide that seems to be coming into place within the Republican Party about whether to keep in that isolationist lane or to take a more hawkish stance? And what is your read on which direction the administration is leaning at this hour?
Look, there may be dissenters in MAGA world who have strong voices. The reality is, what are they going to do if Donald Trump decides that negotiations have run out of runway? The Israelis cannot destroy Iran's nuclear program. What are they going to do? Desert him? No. The reality is that it seems to me that Donald Trump is dominating American politics. This is the 10th year of that, frankly, since the 32nd elevator ride. in 2015. Peter Baker has a phenomenal piece in the New York Times this morning. He sits astride Republican Democratic politics. He also has the Constitution on his side. And the reality is that the presidency is the Energizer Bunny of the political system. He's going to act. There'll be no congressional restraints. And assuming the operation that is planned succeeds, and this is a complicated question, I think, I don't think that there's serious constraints and concerns from inside the Republican Party that will shape his thinking.
No, I think what shapes his thinking is his conception of himself, right? I mean, this is somebody who considers himself the consummate deal maker. Can you make a deal with Iran while you're dropping 30,000-pound bombs on them?
Well, I think once the decision is made to use those GBU-57s with B-2 Spirit bombers and the Iranian reaction to that, I'm hard-pressed to believe, even if the theory of the case is, I'm going to do what the Israelis cannot do. It won't be a massive, comprehensive campaign. We don't need that. I'm simply going to demonstrate to the Iranians and the Israelis that we have essentially capped off Israel's effort. Now, he'll turn to Mr. Netanyahu and say, look, you've done about as much as you can do. I've supplemented it. It's now time to stop. Then he'll turn to the Iranians. And if this is their expectation, the administration's, I think it may not be terribly well thought through. The Iranians are going to respond.
Right.
Despite the asymmetry of power, they have thousands of short-range ballistic missiles. Geography is destiny here. The Gulf, the Saudis, American forces in Iraq and Syria. And yes, the United States military could mount a campaign of shock and awe that could go on for weeks.
Aaron, can I jump in here?
I'm sorry, just one more point. You want to end Iran's nuclear program, you're going to have to basically change the regime, occupy the country, so that there is absolutely no way that any Iranian establishment will be able to continue this. If you don't do that, it seems to me the Iranians are going to reconstitute their program. So the question is, how far along have they thought this through?
You've led me to three buzzwords. You said, it won't be a big operation, shock and awe, regime change. My millennial Iraq war brain immediately goes there. What is the risk inherent in this going to where some of Netanyahu's comments seem to suggest he wants it to, which is an end to this Iranian regime? And I recognize this is impossible, but we are short on time. So give me your most concise answer.
You can do regime change in the Middle East three ways. You can mount millions of people in the streets, Egypt, Tunisia, and military won't fire on the crowd, so the authoritarians have to leave office. Power. You can do what Syria did. HTS, a coherent, cohesive force backed by the Turks, a hollow Assad regime. Within 3 weeks, there are no more Assads. Or you can do Iraq and Afghanistan. You can get rid of Saddam and the Taliban, right, by occupying the country. Good luck with that, given the results. So I think regime change is an illusion. They can break and weaken the regime. They can't piece another Humpty Dumpty together again that is capable of governing and governing in a way that would be amenable both to Israel and the United States. So this seems to me, got to be thought through. And the costs of not thinking it through could be prohibited.
The region abounds with examples of poorly thought through efforts at regime change. Aaron David Miller, we have to leave it there. Thank you for bringing us your expertise. And coming up, safety concerns. Senators react after receiving a bipartisan security briefing in the aftermath of that fatal shooting of a Minnesota lawmaker. Plus, immigration crackdown whiplash. DHS orders ICE agents back into meatpacking plants, farms, hotels, and restaurants. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. Senate Democrats are now calling for more security and less heated political rhetoric after this weekend's shooting of 2 lawmakers in Minnesota. All senators received a security briefing this morning from the Senate Sergeant-at-Arms and Capitol Police. Minority Leader Chuck Schumer later blaming what he called reckless rhetoric for a rise in threats against politicians.
The dangerous environment isn't isn't spontaneous, however. It's being stoked, often deliberately, by reckless rhetoric coming from some of the most powerful voices in the country. When political opponents are treated like enemies, when leaders encourage the kind of protest that can lead to violence, it increases that violence. So it's the responsibility of all leaders, especially President Trump, to not just unequivocally condemn hatred, but to stop the violent and regressive language against political opponents.
Well, today's Senate briefing came after President Trump overnight said he did not plan to speak with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz in the wake of this weekend's attacks.
I think the governor of Minnesota is so whacked out. I'm not calling him. Why would I call him? I could call him and say, hi, how you doing? The guy doesn't have a clue. He's a mess. So, I could be nice and call him, but why waste time?
NBC News senior national political reporter Sahil Kapoor joins me now. And Sahil, Republican Senator Mike Lee has taken a lot of heat. He's now taken down some inflammatory tweets about the Minnesota shooting. Lee was confronted by Minnesota Senator Tina Smith about the tweets yesterday, refused to answer questions about it. Do we know what led to based Mike Lee, as he calls himself on Twitter, to remove these posts?
We don't exactly know, Garrett, because as you mentioned, Mike Lee has been running away from reporters, trying to evade questions about this. We do know that he was confronted and had discussions with both of Minnesota's senators, both Democrats. First, Tina Smith. That was yesterday. She confronted him. She told him that his posts were out of line, that they were cruel. This is as she related to reporters later on. Senator Klobuchar as well said she had a conversation with Mike Lee after Tina Smith did. She didn't divulge details of the conversation, but she said only, quote, Senator Lee and I had a good discussion, and I'm very glad he took down those taunting online posts. And she also said that Minnesota had genuinely come together, left, right, and center on this, and she didn't think that those extraneous posts from the senator from Utah were particularly helpful.
Yeah, Mike Lee last seen hiding behind a staffer's iPad as reporters tried to ask him questions about this. Sahil, what did senators say about today's security hearing? I feel like we've had a lot of these in the last couple of years.
Yeah, there was a briefing that senators had with Capitol Police and the Senate Sergeant at Arms. Now, a few takeaways here. There was somewhat of a reluctance to reveal too much because any details that could be divulged about how to keep lawmakers safe could, in theory, they worry, be used by those who want to harm them. Second, there was a desire to balance security with lawmakers staying accessible to constituents. This is an extremely important priority for Article 1. They want to be accessible to their voters. And third, this is also about ensuring that ordinary people, not just lawmakers, but ordinary people aren't afraid to show up at political rallies, to be in the public square, because if there is violence happening there, then that could discourage people from participating in politics. Now, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer spoke to reporters about this, said, they need significantly more resources. He said they're going to need support from Senate Republicans in order to achieve that because they control the Senate. But he said he saw very hopeful signs in the meetings that they will move in that direction.
All right, Sahil, thank you. We ran out of time to talk about the reconciliation bill, but something tells me we're going to have a lot more time before that thing gets close to the finish line, so we'll have you back. Appreciate it. I want to turn now to the latest reversal from the Trump administration on its immigration crackdown. The administration now says it will be conducting immigration enforcement at hotels, restaurants, and agricultural workplaces, places like farms and meatpacking plants. ICE had paused arrests at those work sites, those very same ones, last week, and the president acknowledged that the agriculture and hospitality industries had been hurt by valuable workers being deported. But in a statement today, a Department of Homeland Security spokesperson said that worksite enforcement remains a cornerstone of our efforts to safeguard public safety and national security and economic stability. Joining me now is NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley, whose neck is no doubt sore from the whiplash over the last couple days. So, Julia, what can you tell us about how we got from reversal to reversal of the reversal and back to where we are now?
Yeah, you know, Garrett, it really speaks to the ongoing debate within the Republican Party over how far you can take immigration enforcement without stepping on the interest of businesses. And we know that they've been doing workplace enforcements. They did a big one in Omaha right around the same time as the L.A. raids that sparked the protest. And in this case, we understood, at least through Trump on Truth Social, that he was hearing from business owners and the agriculture and hospitality sectors that the worksite enforcement was going too far, scaring away potential employees who could come. And so he said, we're going to change course. That's a pretty big admonition from this president, as you know well. But then we saw a memo that followed that telling people not to do worksite enforcement. That didn't leave out the employees. They could still be arrested in their homes, but at least the where, that was prohibited, not to do it at those places. Then it may have been the media coverage, people talking about how there was a shift or perhaps Trump was weakening his resolve when it came to immigration enforcement. And we saw them course correct. Now, not through a memo, but through communication, probably through a phone call where they've now said, you know what, forget what that memo said. You can now go forward, make arrest in work sites.
Our viewers know this because they see it on local television. I mean, these enforcement actions become the top story in every community when they happen. Is the president now essentially a prisoner of a policy that he campaigned on for the last 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, the tough thing, what he campaigned on was deportation.
Mass
you remember
deportations.
that
They
on
were
the
waving the
campaign
signs
trail.
at the convention.
And now all we talk about is arrests. And arrests don't necessarily equal deportations. In fact, a lot of the people that they're arresting aren't deportable. They
Much
have,
to the administration's disappointment.
Yes, and they have orders from judges saying that they have pending asylum cases or they cannot be removed to certain countries. And so you're seeing these mass sweeps that, again, capture the attention when they happen because it's so visible, whereas a deportation, that can happen from a small airport no one sees. And so it seems that the optics are still the prime focus here. And for now, he's going to continue these arrests because his calculation, or at least calculations from people like Stephen Miller, are to continue to do these arrests. And, of course, when asked about this, he's pivoting to this new focus on blue cities. And that's what he wants to see next. That's where he wants to see the clash, more so than at the work site. But if they're going to get those arrest numbers up, work sites are where you get the numbers.
Well, it's going to be interesting to follow this and more raids coming to a community near you, it sounds like. Julia Ainsley, appreciate all of your reporting on that. And still ahead, voters are voting in Virginia, and we're talking on the ground to some of them ahead of what will be a major race to watch in November. You are watching Meet the Press Now. And welcome back. As the White House weighs America's next move in the Middle East, the potential for wider U.S. involvement in the region has opened up something of an intra-Republican, or at least intra-MAGA divide, with President Trump seemingly caught in the middle. On the one side, there are the ultra-MAGA voices like Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, Steve Bannon, Tucker Carlson, urging the president to keep the U.S. out of this conflict, using his old America First campaign slogan. While there are also traditional Republican voices like South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham that say Mr. Trump should leave his military options open to ensure that Iran does not acquire nuclear weapons. Joining me now on set is our panel, Rhonda Colvin, a senior congressional reporter for The Washington Post. Anthony Coley's a former Justice Department spokesperson under President Biden and an NBC News contributor. And Danielle Pletka is a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. She is also an NBC News contributor. So, Ron, I want to start with you and play some of the president's inaugural address. We'll see where this guy is on the Iran issue. Listen.
Like in 2017, we will again build the strongest military the world has ever seen. We will measure our success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars that we end, and perhaps most importantly, the wars we never get into. My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. That's what I want to be, a peacemaker and a unifier.
How do you square that guy with the guy who's posting on Truth Social about targeting Khamenei and, potentially bombing Iran?
Certainly doesn't seem like the same type of statements that we saw not only at the inauguration, but on the campaign trail. He said it over and over again. He talked about Ukraine, ending that war, ending the conflict in the Middle East. And now what we've seen over the last 24 or 48 hours, it does appear that he is not keeping to some of those campaign promises.
He looks at all of this as through the prism of trying to be a deal maker. I mean, is this a little bit of being bad cop now to try to see if he can get Iran back to the table? What's your read on that?
Could be a little bit of bad cop. He is someone that has developed a persona of strong arming and negotiating. But it also may just be because of the circumstances that are happening right now that are probably out of his control. And now we're seeing him react to them. So it might be just, the circumstances. It may just be him wanting to be a negotiator, knowing that there's not much anyone really can do. He is the, commander in chief. I know one of your experts earlier said, what can MAGA world really do right now if he wants to move forward with any sort of, muscular gestures toward Iran.
Right.
But it may be a little bit of all of that.
I mean, ultimately, right now, they're trying to make this argument, Danny. Marjorie Taylor Greene's been out there on the forefront. I know you have your Twitter alerts set up for her, so I probably don't have to read this to you. But for the benefit of our audience, I want to put something up where she's commenting on a post from Tucker Carlson saying, foreign wars, intervention, regime change, put America last, kill innocent people, making us broke, will ultimately lead to our destruction. She goes on to say, that's what millions of Americans voted for. It's what we believe is America first. So first, I'm curious what your take is on her argument, but also I think this setting up for the tug of war over what the real meaning is of the America first argument.
So this is the great horseshoe, right? This is where you have Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar meeting up with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson.
It's a spectrum.
It's a circle, actually. And Bernie Sanders and Marjorie Taylor Greene agree. When Bernie Sanders and Marjorie Taylor Greene agree, I feel super happy at where I am on the circle. So now, what do Republicans think? 80% of Republicans support Israel's need to deal with the nuclear threat from Iran. And the thing that we as Americans need to remember is this is a country that threatened to tried to kill Donald Trump, has tried to kill previous U.S. leaders, is trying currently to kill members of Donald Trump's first term, right? So,
whom he's canceled security for.
Who he has canceled security for. Nonetheless, let us remember that this is not simply the enemy of the Jews in the state of Israel. This is, in fact, our enemy, and one that has killed more Americans since its inception as the Islamic Republic than any other group other than al-Qaeda.
Anthony, as someone who used to advise a cabinet member, I'm curious what you make of the way the president dismissed Tulsi Gabbard almost out of hand and the comments that she had made about where Iran was on developing a nuclear weapon.
And it's not just that. He didn't even invite her. They had this big meeting at Camp David on Sunday, and he didn't invite her to that. This is supposed to be the director of national intelligence, and we're in the midst of this major international conflict, right? I mean, the basis for whatever we do here is based on intelligence. How are you not going to have the person in charge of it, right? When you have all of the best people he promised us. I do want to go back to this point that Danny said, though, because I think it's important. When you talk about the base of the Republican Party, they are overwhelmingly in favor of this action. I grew up in the rural South. Christian conservatives, evangelicals, even black Christians who vote Democratic, they believe quite strongly that that the United States should stand firmly with Israel. But you also made some other good points, is that this is an active threat against the country. And so if the president ends up doing this, I think it's going to be, certainly in the short term, a show of strength for him and for the country, if it happens.
Well, that's interesting, because the other person on our horseshoe diagram we should have prepared in graphics before this segment is John Fetterman, who doesn't fall neatly into any of those categories, but has been very outspoken on Israel and has been saying essentially the same thing, that Americans and the president should stand with Israel. How does that complicate Democratic messaging on this? There doesn't seem to be a kind of a unified Democratic position on this at all either.
The most important thing that can happen right now is for the president to talk with the legislative branch, Democrats and Republicans. That is not happening. I was unlikely. I was working on the Hill. I was a baby staffer after 9/11. I was working on the Hill, and I vividly remember the Bush administration coming to the Hill to convince lawmakers to give them authorization. Do you remember this?
Yeah, of course.
That's not happening. That's, to your question, Garrett, that is the opening for Democrats, right? We're just coming off of this No Kings rally, and here we have Donald Trump acting like an imperialist, right? He is not respecting the fact that Congress is a co-equal branch of government. Those norms, those protocols, the law exists for a reason, and that's the opening.
Yeah, go ahead, Dane.
I think you make a really important point, but I think it's not just Donald Trump that doesn't respect that Congress is a co-equal branch of government. Congress does not respect.
100% true. They have given away so much of their authority in this era, except, Rhonda, for Tim Kaine, who's going to put forward some legislation today trying to sort of mark his territory on this, a war powers vote. Is that going to get much pickup on the other end of the horseshoe?
Well, I don't know if we're seeing a lot of Republican support right now in the Senate for Tim Kaine's resolution, the war powers resolution that would curb the president doing anything in terms of getting the U.S. involved in Iran. However, on the House side, you have Representative Massey from Kentucky, a Republican who is joining with Ro Khanna. There are a lot of progressive Democrats who are also on that legislation. They're also moving with their resolution as well. Now, will House Republican leadership bring that up for a vote? It is a privileged resolution, but they may try to circumvent it because, I'm not sure where leadership is on this issue or if they want to publicly state where they are on this issue. Republican leadership. But go ahead.
No, that's okay. I want to change gears a little bit because we have a limited amount of time, and I'm fascinated by this topic. And Danny, I want to ask you about this specifically. We were talking about immigration in the last segment and the box that the president has put himself in between his mass deportations effort and the functioning of the U.S. economy. How do you see them squaring the circle on this effort to limit where and who we deport, with also ramping up the numbers that the president seems committed to? He's reversed himself several times in the last 4 days.
Right. Well, part of the president's problem is that, of course, our dirty secret is that we rely on a lot of these illegal immigrants for, not just in the farm industry, in the restaurant industry, and in a lot of places. So the natural thing would be to figure out what to do about this through, the legislative process. That's not going to happen for a whole variety of reasons, not least that after 4 years of Joe Biden's presidency, support for legal immigration has plummeted, so the solution isn't out there. I think what he needs to do is, frankly, manage this properly, deal with the criminals he keeps talking about, deal with the people who have previously been deported and do not need a hearing because they've already been sent out, to do that and to do it less on the front page of every single newspaper. But that's not Donald Trump.
Anthony, give me the very quick last word here on that, because I'm curious about how Democrats have been handcuffed by this moment, too.
So Danny said that the solution isn't out there, and she's right. It's not out there now, but it has been out there. It was barely a year ago when the toughest immigration comprehensive reform bill, toughest border bill in a generation, was brokered by conservatives in the Senate, had Democratic support, it had the support of Joe Biden, and this president killed that legislation because he wanted to campaign on the issue, right? So this is all, even now, into his administration, this is politics at its worst. And people, the economy is suffering for it, and people are being, unfortunately, implicated in a very negative way.
Well, on that happy note, we have to wrap this up. Anthony, Danny, Rana, thank you all for coming in and being part of this conversation. Wish we could keep it going, but it's only the 1 hour show today. So up next, new endorsements and non-endorsements in the race to be the next mayor of New York City. Steve Kornacki is at the big board to explain why next week's primary might not actually narrow the field as much as voters might expect or hope. You're watching Meet the Press Now. If it's Tuesday, somebody is voting somewhere, and today that somewhere is Virginia, even though the race at the top of the ticket is already set. With incumbent Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin term limited, Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger will face off against Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl-Sears in November. The only competitive races today are the Democratic primaries for Lieutenant Governor and Attorney General. And November's race for governor will be both closely watched and competitive, though history here favors the Democrat. We've only got this century on our graphic here, but in 9 of the last 10 Virginia governor's races, voters elected a governor from the party that did not hold the White House. The only exception you'll note there is in 2013. Our resident Commonwealth politics watcher, Gary Grumbach, is on the ground, as he so often is, in Virginia on this primary day. Gary, you're on the ground, I think, in Fairfax County. The governor primary is already set. What are folks telling you about November? What issues are on their mind now?
So, Gary, so often we're around the country over the past several years talking to voters, and we expect to hear them talk about some of the kitchen table issues, right? Immigration, abortion, the economy. That's not what we're hearing today. What we're hearing in Fairfax County, which is about a 60-40 county in northern Virginia, about west of Washington, D.C., is a lot of the more weighty issues, democracy, compassion. Here's what some folks I talked to had to say.
Well, I think one of the things that we've lost perhaps in this whole country is a significant degree of compassion. Something's really gone down. We need to get that back.
God only knows what's going to happen if there's no stopping this destructive train that is just dismantling everything.
You're concerned?
Absolutely. Everybody is, and everybody should be.
Now, this is sort of a lower profile primary because, as you said, the governor's race is set and there are no contested statewide Republicans running at all across the Commonwealth. But sometimes it is refreshing to hear what some folks find really important to them are the real local issues, like the casino that's being built down the street and what candidates do or do not support it. Garrett?
Gary, what's your sense of how DOGE is going to be a factor in November? I know it's a long way off, but obviously Virginia has a ton of federal employees, not just in Fairfax County where you are, but of course that is kind of the engine of the state for Democratic voters.
Yeah, they've got more than 300,000 federal employees across the state, most of them in Northern Virginia. And that has been a big topic of conversation that we've heard from voters today, saying they worry about their friends, their neighbors, their family members who may have been impacted by some of these cuts by the Department of Government Efficiency. Some of them saying they've spent a lot of time at job fairs helping their colleagues and their neighbors out over the past few weeks. That's absolutely something that is going to be seen in this race. And on the Republican side in Virginia, what we are seeing is that Governor Youngkin, who is term limited here and cannot run again, has been saying we're open for business. We have lots of jobs available. Whereas Abigail Spanberger, who's running for the Democratic side, says they're getting to the bottom of that issue, not just saying there's jobs available.
Two very well-known candidates for governor will be on the ballot in November, and Elon Musk's name not appearing, but certainly going to be a factor there. Gary Grumbach, thank you for that reporting. We'll move up the coast now with 1 week to go before the New York mayoral primary in New York City. Longshot candidate and city comptroller Brad Lander was handcuffed and taken into custody by ICE after locking arms with a defendant on his way out of immigration court today. The Department of Homeland Security says he was arrested for assaulting law enforcement and impeding a federal officer. And with early voting underway, Lander trails frontrunner and former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, as well as political newcomer Zohran Mamdani in recent polls. Mamdani, a 33-year-old state rep and Democratic socialist, took a hit this week when the New York Times editorial board called his agenda, quote, uniquely unsuited to the city's challenges, basically endorsing anybody else. But his campaign got a shot in the arm today with the endorsement of Bernie Sanders. NBC News national political correspondent Steve Kornacki joins us now from the big board with why this race may not actually be over after Tuesday's primary. Steve, I think it's got something to do with ranked choice voting and complicated ballots. Walk us through it.
Yeah, and some very unusual laws in New York when it comes to elections. But, yeah, you would think overwhelmingly Democratic city, Democratic primary next week. Whoever wins that, you might as well just call that person his honor or her honor, right? Well, not necessarily because, well, you mentioned it with Mamdani. He's one of the two frontrunners in the polling so far. We'll see if that arrest today of Brad Lander does anything with his poll numbers, if anybody else makes some noise. But all of the attention really lately has been on these two, Cuomo, Mamdani. Now, Mamdani, for the reasons you just mentioned, the reasons that kept the New York Times, for instance, from endorsing him in this primary coming up, he's got some real political baggage. Is socialism, far-left views, some inflammatory pronouncements he made. They're being featured heavily in attack ads right now. If Mamdani were to win the Democratic nomination, there might be some discontent among Democrats. And there certainly might be some vulnerability in a general election, voters who wouldn't necessarily be sold on him, even if they would ordinarily vote Democratic. On the other hand, Andrew Cuomo, who's been the frontrunner here, he resigned in that sexual harassment scandal as governor back in 2021. He has been dogged by questions about his handling of COVID, nursing homes in particular, when he was governor. There was a recent poll that found among Democrats, more than 40% in New York City say they have a negative view of Cuomo. He's got baggage. He's got political liabilities that could plausibly carry over into a general election. And that's where the strange laws in New York come into effect when it comes to these elections. It's basically this. In New York, third parties can nominate candidates who are already major party nominees. So let's play this out. A couple potential scenarios here. So let's say next week, okay, these are the potential general election ballot lines, parties that these candidates could have. Let's say that Andrew Cuomo were to lose the Democratic primary to Zohran Mamdani. So Zohran Mamdani would then be the Democratic candidate. Cuomo couldn't run as the Democratic candidate. In most states, he'd be eliminated. The race would be over. But Cuomo is also going to be the nominee of a party he created called the Fight and Deliver Party. So even if he loses the primary and Mamdani is the Democratic candidate, Cuomo can still run in November as the Fight and Deliver candidate. For that matter, if Cuomo were to win the primary and Mamdani were to lose it, there's a party party called the Working Families Party that's already said Democrats should vote for Mamdani in this primary that may well endorse him if he wants to run as their candidate. So he could take another shot at it in the general election. There's going to be a Republican nominee, Curtis Sliwa, the current mayor, Eric Adams. He's not running in the Democratic primary, but he's created his own parties. He's running in the general election. There's an independent, too. So really, if this is close, would Cuomo, would Mamdani turn around and try again in the general election? If they want to, Garrett, they've both got vehicles to do so.
I'm dizzy now, Steve. Thank you so much for that, and I look forward to the creation of your new party. I think we could sneak you on the ballot still. It feels like there's time.
No interest.
All right, fair enough. We'll leave it there, Steve Kornacki. Thank you for breaking that down. And still to come, Russia pounds Kyiv in a deadly overnight onslaught as President Trump leaves the G7 summit before a scheduled meeting with President Zelenskyy. Former ambassador to Ukraine joins me in studio next. You're watching Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. President Trump was expected to meet face-to-face with Ukrainian President Zelenskyy today at the G7. But after Trump abruptly decided to leave the summit early, just hours after he criticized the group for expelling Russia from what was then the G8, that meeting will not be happening. Meanwhile, Russia launched hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles into Ukraine overnight. According to local officials, 16 people were killed and over 150 were injured, primarily in Kyiv. It was the deadliest attack on the capital city this year. Joining me now is Bill Taylor, former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine and distinguished fellow at the Atlantic Council, someone I was so excited to talk to. We jumped into the segment early in the commercial break. How important was this meeting for President Zelenskyy that's now not going to be happening face-to-face? He needed this.
He did need this. And as we know, he's had a good meeting and a bad meeting.
Yeah.
And he wanted to capitalize on the good meeting and reinforce what they talked about before, which was continued support from the Americans for the Ukrainians as they defend themselves against the Russians.
The president has been all over the map on Russia and Ukraine. Obviously, he ran on ending the war on day one. When we were in the Middle East a month ago or so now, he was talking about he would go physically to Turkey if he could be present for the peace talks. In the Oval Office a week ago, he said maybe they just need to fight it out for a little while. Where do you think he really stands on this, and how real is the threat to simply walk away?
I don't think it's possible to walk away. I think he is deeply involved, whether he likes it or not. He's made the commitments that you talked about. He's had the conversations. He would have shown up for those discussions, and it was Putin that didn't show up. Zelenskyy was there. Trump was going to be there, and Putin didn't show up. So President Trump has to figure out that President Putin is not his buddy, is not his co-conspirator, is not going to help him out on this.
He spoke with President Putin on Saturday, most recently. I think he spoke to him once in the week prior to that. I mean, they are certainly chatting a lot, to use your buddy metaphor here. I think President Trump's supporters would say, like, he's using these interpersonal skills to try to reel Putin in. Do you see any evidence of that being effective? And who could convince President Trump that Vladimir Putin is not his buddy?
Only Putin. Putin is going to overplay his hand, is overplaying his hand. When Putin does these enormous attacks on Kyiv, on the capital, just while the G7 is meeting, is a demonstration that he is overplaying his hand. He could let that go, but no, he is going to demonstrate to the world, to the leaders, that he is not interested in peace. And President Trump will figure that out.
The European leaders of the G7 were talking about calling for tougher sanctions on Russia. I guess I have two questions about this. As a layperson, it shocks me that there are still tough sanctions out there that don't exist on Russia, 3 years into this war now? How effective would anything that's still left in the toolkit be at this point? How realistic is that possibility?
Garrett, it turns out there are a couple of tools left. One, they can, there's this price cap on oil, which is at $60 a barrel, and that could come down to 45 or 30 is what the Europeans are talking about. There are banks, there are big banks that are actually not sanctioned yet. There's $300 billion worth of Russian money, of Russian central bank money in European banks that have been frozen since the big war started, that could be taken for the Europeans to give to the Ukrainians, and they can keep buying weapons.
But in all this time, surely Putin has sanction-proofed his economy to the degree that's possible. I mean, how much would, let's say you put all of those sanctions in place tomorrow, how much of an impact would it actually have on the Russian economy?
The Russian economy is weaker now than it was when we were putting on those sanctions. So that has changed. and the ability to make the Russians go after things that are more expensive with less money. Again, the reduction in the volumes of funds, of dollars, of rubles that go into the Russian economy, that's what they can push down on.
Very quickly, you mentioned the idea that Putin could convince Trump that Putin is not his buddy. He can overplay his hand. Is there anything left for Zelenskyy to say or do at this point with President Trump, or is he best suited to sit back and say, this is what I told you he was going to do?
President Zelenskyy has already been pointing out that he and Ukraine are assets, that they bring security to Europe. They're defending Europe against the Russians. They're also able to buy things from the United States, buy weapons from the United States. They don't want it gifted. They want to buy them.
And trade is what Donald Trump wants to be talking about. Bill Taylor, I appreciate your expertise. As always, we have to leave it there, and we have to leave it there for this broadcast. Thank you. We're back tomorrow with more Meet the Press Now, but the news continues with Tom Costello in for Hallie Jackson right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.